Welcome to the talk show Life Stories with Marc Hoberman. The goal of this show is to provide a learning experience to people of all ages, with guests from various fields in academics, a wide range of industries, and insight into the many forms of art, athletics, and entertainment. We hope you enjoy the show. Anti-bullying presenter Tom Murphy is today's guest. Tom will talk about sweethearts and heroes and his vast experience helping young people end bullying.
Anti-bullying advocate and presenter Tom Murphy. Welcome to Life Stories with Marc Hoberman.
What's up, Mark? How you doing, buddy?
I'm doing well today, doing well. So excited to have you on. Such a full circle, and that word will come up later, of course, in your life, Tom. You know, you didn't find your actual calling until a little later on in life. So before we get into your amazing anti-bullying expertise and the things and the programs you offer, can you tell us a little bit about your childhood?
Yeah, man. Talk about full circle. Wow. I was born and raised in Philadelphia. My parents ran a pretty unique mission home where they took people off the streets of Philadelphia. No idea why. I mean, I've talked to my parents about it a bunch, but they opened up their doors. It wasn't a state-run home. It was just people that were really at the end of their rope. And I have come to understand it as I've gotten older, that they all shared one common thread, and that's that feeling of hopelessness on the inside. I could write a book, Mark, about my brothers and sisters growing up, the people that shared our dinner table. And then on the weekend, we'd be in prison visiting them. And they were just my brothers and sisters. I didn't know any different. And I thought everybody had homeless people living with them growing up. I tell people, I've only said this a handful of times, but my parents gave away their only son's bedroom. And at the age of 9, I slept in a bathtub for a year. It was my bedroom, was the third floor bathroom. And I didn't see that that's when this began. Anyway, fast forward, we moved to upstate New York. My parents kept it going. They bought a house for $32,000 in like 1984. Had a barn on it. They converted a few apartments in the barn, had people shipped up from the city to our house. Kind of weird. As a middle schooler, you don't tell people you have homeless people living in your barn. And then I got involved in the sport of wrestling, and it just dominated my life. It was my kind of one of my saviors. It took this kid who was off the walls, every teacher's worst nightmare. And I wasn't a bad kid. I just couldn't sit still. And it channeled me. It gave me this direction, this purpose, and it filled this aggression. Sometimes we think of aggression as a bad thing, but there's a tremendous amount of utility in aggression. And I just didn't have a way to channel it. And when I found the sport of wrestling, it did. Terrible student growing up, find myself going to college to wrestle. If I told you the story right now, you'd believe in cosmic forces. It's almost an impossible tale to believe. But I get in. I find a couple of these more knowledgeable others that understood me, like as Vygotsky would say, that this zone of proximal development, I couldn't get past even the beginning stages of education until I found these people. And in particular, a guy, his name was Dr. Owen Ireland, came into my life, history professor, ran for the New York State Senate, and he just recognized something in me. As I showed up for his first class late, that was a good strategy of mine for a class in college and high school, was show up late. You don't have to do half the work. But eventually he taught me that life was not a talent contest. It's a strategy game. And those that have the greatest strategies win the game. And he said, Tom, you have every strategy you need to be successful from the sport of wrestling. You just have to learn to apply those to academics and eventually other parts of your life. So I excelled academically. I graduated with almost a perfect GPA in philosophy and psychology. I didn't get any smarter. I just learned to apply those strategies. Anyway, wrestling gets done. I'll land my plane here quickly. But wrestling gets done. I wasn't ready to stop. Most people, athletically, college is the end. I wasn't ready. I jump into the workforce, find myself in northern Vermont, next to one of the greatest teams on planet Earth in the sport of mixed martial arts, which just translates very well from wrestling. And I just started training with those guys, not because I wanted to compete, but just because I have this animal, this hawk that needs to be controlled. And wrestling did that for me. So I spent another 10 years, training, competing a little bit. And I found myself on a crazy TV show, 40 Days in Las Vegas, a reality TV show. Didn't realize what was happening. My sister actually applied me to it. I didn't even apply to it. Didn't even watch the first season. And anyway, I got done with the show. People called me, hey, can you talk to my volleyball team, my whatever? And I'm like, yeah. Just been able to take great lessons from coaches, business, sports, life, and give them to kids. And I started doing that just, here and there, leadership, motivational, goal setting stuff. A buddy of mine that I wrestled with in college called me in a panic and said, hey, Tom, I need you to do something on bullying. I've seen you present. I was supposed to have this speaker come in. It fell through. What can you do for me? I'm like, I guess I could do something. And I came up with this crazy little message called Sweethearts and Heroes. And one school saw it. Another school called us and said, can you do that? We heard about it. And so I just started doing a handful of these while I was training, while I was working in the railroad industry. And then something happened, man. And this will kind of land the plane here. I'm doing a presentation and I'm in an auditorium. Lights are going down. Kids are all gone. And I turn around, there's this young man. I'll never forget his face the rest of my life. I turn around, there he is standing there. And I could just tell he needed to talk about something. I'm like, what's up, dude? And he just poured his heart out. And me, as an aggressive wrestler, mixed martial artist, guy, whatever the heck that means, I didn't know how to handle that. This was 13, 14 years ago. And as his eyes started filling up with tears and he's talking about the challenges of life, I realized at that moment that I'm standing in front of one of my brothers and sisters growing up. The travesty of this kid's life, the trauma that he's been through, the relationships that he's struggling with. And I didn't know what to do. I was like, dude, you're going to be on the big stage someday. That's what I said to him. Like, what a terrible thing to say to someone that's starting to get emotional. Right. And I did it, I think, as a reaction to get him to stop and to get himself under control, because I didn't know what to do. And he literally looks at the stage that I just got off of and he goes, I'm never doing that. But I got his emotions under control. The tears weren't going to start running. And I said, no, dude, the big stage. And he's like, what do you mean? I said, in your coffin, like hopefully years from now. And I said, bro, the only people that are showing up are the people whose life you've affected in a positive way. Because that's what he was wrestling with. These relationships that were a mess, that were dragging him in the wrong direction. And I said, bro, those people you're talking about to me, they're not even showing up. Like, why are you focused on that? And that was like the best piece of advice I had for this kid at that time. But really, Mark, that just started this chain of events for me where I found all these young people were coming to me and they were talking about one thing, their battle with hope and hopelessness. And as I started to really explore myself, the challenges that young people are going through today, it's never been harder to be a young person in the world today. I mean, what young people go through today, you and I can't even imagine the stress and the challenges that these young minds and bodies and emotions and souls are going through. And so I just dedicated my life to it, man. In 2014, I quit my job 17 years or so and just went all in. And a fascinating speaking partner that understands hope and hopelessness like nobody's business. And I'd love to connect with him someday if you'd love to talk to him. But that's our journey, man. And it's taken us in front of almost 2 million students from Houston to Hawaii to Montreal and back. And I couldn't be more blessed, man, to have the universe put me in front of so many students and educators and even parents and community members.
Absolutely. And you're singing my song there because of all the years I spent in education. But, I know you do programs in schools. One of the programs I do is called Study Skills for Health and Wellness and to Reduce Stress, because I asked you what the commitment was and you, without knowing that you answered it, the answer is the commitment is you have to know it's more than just the physical, because you tapped on something I always talk about, which is you don't learn when you first read something. You only learn and internalize it when you review. And too many people who study for 3 hours are just studying new material for 3 hours, and there's no review. So, like you say, I love your thing about you better not compete the first time there. If I go to a school, sometimes there are breakout sessions in classrooms and things like that. If I've done camping conventions, I want to see that room, because even though what I'm delivering might be very similar from one to another, where are you going to stand when you face the audience? Where are they going to be? It's not just in front of you. So to be around those surroundings, it's so important, because people only see the dazzle and the lights. And that leads me to my next question, which is what I like to focus on my show is, what's the story behind the glory? What obstacles have you had to overcome while spreading your message to the world? There's no way in the world, and I'll never call you a liar. First of all, because you're an MMA fighter, I'm not. And second of all, because I know this is true. There is no way when you did this, you said, oh, I did a good speech. I'm sure in the next 10, 15 years, I'll speak to 2 million kids. No way did you think that. So I know there were obstacles along the way. What were they?
Oh, God, man. Where do I start with this one? I think I'm the biggest obstacle myself.
Mhm.
I grew up, I challenge you to find my academic equal.
Mhm.
I had a combined 630 on my SATs. You probably got that on one half of your SAT. Most educators, 1,000, 1,100, but I got a combined 630. And so for me to go into the world of education and talk to teachers and superintendents and principals, about academics, I questioned myself hardcore. Um, after school, they say, hey, can you stick around and talk to our teachers in the auditorium about stuff that they need to know related to this? And, there's a huge imposter syndrome for me early on. That's hard for me to even articulate, because my own educational background was so challenging. And even after having almost a perfect GPA in college, in psychology and philosophy, I still questioned it. I'm like, I just got lucky. So I would just tell you that I was my biggest hurdle. And I still battle that mental game myself. We all carry around these great bags of mental bricks that just drag us down and weigh us down, and they just exhaust us. But you have to have a process of understanding how to release those bricks. And there's a lot of ways to do that, but that's the first thing that pops into my head, man, is I was my own worst enemy. I think we all are. I'm my own worst critic, and you got to get over that hurdle. But a lot of getting over that hurdle, as cliche as it sounds, is it's about getting out there and failing and picking yourself back up and having other people around you to pick you back up and to dust you off and say, no, man, your heart is in the right place. You just got to find the right message. In the world of education, there's a million hurdles. Everyone is bombarded. Like I talk to every month, I'll talk to a couple dozen people that want to go and speak in schools. And they're like, how do you do it, Tom? Dude, we turned away 100+ schools this year. We turned away 100+ schools last year. I got 26 or 27 schools that are already on our calendar for next year. And people are like, how do you do it? How do you do it? I've tried so hard. We got such a great message. It's the system. Schools are bombarded with, requests and, people that have the next greatest thing. And that's an enormous hurdle to get over that really requires its own podcast or its own session of like, how do you truly get over that? And how do you break through and become the dazzle? We spoke to 3,000 administrators in Kentucky this year. People like, how do you do that? Well, it's a long road. And if you don't put that 10 years of grinding in, making those connections, building those relationships, like it just doesn't happen. And you have this great plan in your brain and you can see the way you can help people, but it's a heck of a lot more than that. And, ultimately, man, just like that kid in that auditorium, it just comes down to relationships, what you can learn from other people, how they can help build you, how you can partner and connect with them. And so, there's a lot of little things, Mark, when it comes to my own speaking ability. I watch myself. I don't know how many other speakers or presenters do that, but if you don't, it's a huge mistake. Even my speaking partner, Rick, still doesn't watch himself, and I get after him all the time about it. But I cringe when I watch myself from 10 years ago speak, and I'm like, that is a huge hurdle to build your skills as a speaker. And that's a difficult thing to do because you got to evaluate yourself and you got to have the courage to let other people evaluate you and say, tell me what you really think. Oh, great speech, Tom. No, 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 no. I don't want to hear that. Stop doing that to me. What do I need to fix? How do I need to make it better? Don't tell me I did a great job. Tell me what I need to fix. And that takes a lot of courage to do that with yourself and to be truly honest and really want to hear what people really have to say. Because when your skin crawls and you feel yourself getting defensive, you got to be able to work with that and not make an excuse. And I tell people, I don't argue, lay it on me. I'm not going to give you, oh yeah, but it was because of this.
Right.
No, 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 no. I'm not going to do that. Just give it to me, man. Tell me the truth. Be honest with me. So, man, there's a million hurdles. I think you got to work with yourself because, that 6 inches between your ears controls the 6 feet below it. And if you're not preparing that all the time, you're in trouble.
For sure. And I have to tell you that you mentioned something earlier. So one of the companies, that I own is Great Success Education. And we started, the biggest thing we do is SAT and ACT prep. So I'm telling the kids out there, boys, girls, anybody, I want you to be like Tom, but don't be like his SAT score. Because that was kind of low. But you know what? I'm so glad you said that because you said, oh, well, yeah, I own the company. I had a very high, I was an English teacher, English score, but my math score, not so much. So what I want people to know, and you are living proof of it, you are not defined by a score, by a grade, by your average, and you've proven that. So I want to now jump to something.
Mark, get me one comment about that because sometimes and I'm glad you called me out on it, really, in your own way. But sometimes I wave that flag like I'm proud of that. There's very few regrets I have in my life, and that's not a regret. I'm glad I had the scores I had. If I told you how I got into college with those kind of grades, that, like I said, it would make you believe in cosmic forces. I'm not proud of that. I use it as a teachable moment, which is one of our great pillows, teachable moments. And I think I do need to, and I thank you for this, for kind of, whether you realized it or not, calling me out on it, because there's nothing to be proud of to be a young person and to fluff off and not do what you're supposed to be doing, being irresponsible. I mean, that's part of that responsible decision making, one of those great core competencies. But nobody could get my interest in education until I got to college. And I'm going to turn, and again, I'm not making an excuse, but I'm going to turn this back on the system because the system didn't adapt to my needs as a student. And I was labeled dyslexic. My father chose not to get me help. He homeschooled me for a year in Philadelphia before we left. He told me, Tom, that just means that you can read backwards better than other people. Mm-hmm. And I was tickled to death. I thought I had a superpower. And, he tried his best. I mean, my dad was an educator for special needs kids, but it was back in the 1970s and 80s. And we didn't understand ADHD. We didn't understand dyslexia the way we do today. And that put me in a real disadvantage because as I continued, we moved to New York. They tested me. He's got some real challenges, put me in special classes. And the best thing my dad ever did, though, and I'll land on this, is he held me back a year because developmentally, and John Medina talks about this in Attack of the Teenage Brain, he talks about the dual systems model. Mm-hmm. We can look at a young person's physical body and say they're ready for this or they're not ready for that, whether it's a sport or something else. But the brain largely works the same way. And I was on the tail end of the cutoff date. I was a November baby, and which means I was going to be one of the youngest kids in my grade level. And that's a problem for some people, especially that are neurodivergent or something. And so the best thing my dad ever did was in the 4th grade, he held me back a year. And it was exactly what I needed. I was a 19-year-old senior because he held me back a year. And that's probably what gave me the advantage, even in sports, was being 1 year ahead of most of my my peers. So again, thanks for calling me out, because it's a flag sometimes I wave and kids think like I'm proud of it, but I'm not proud of the fact that, I didn't do what I was supposed to do as a young person.
Well, I like to reframe that, because as an educator, I got to be honest, I wasn't calling you out. I think it is a flag to wave, because in so many, over 3 decades of education, I've seen scores a little higher than that. People look at it and have it bury them emotionally. And I think that you're the poster child, poster adult for, you're not a number, you're not a score. I've taught it for years. It is in no way a measurement of how intelligent you are. And the fact that you bounce back from what some would consider a very low score, and look where you are today. So I think it is something to brag about. So I want to brag about you having the fortitude and the growth and the mindset to not let that stifle you and your creativity. So I honestly think it's a great thing, where you came from where you started from. You know the saying, from the frying pan into the fire, you're from the bathtub into the schoolroom. So I think that's a really big deal. I want to close with something. I don't want to end this without talking about, I know in literature class, we'll do something called Socratic seminar. We'll have a circle, and I'll have people, back when I taught, say one thing from one scene from Romeo and Juliet, or from a poem, or from a novel. And when I did peer mediation and conflict resolution and natural helpers back in the day, we had circles where we talked to people. And I think the crux of what I've read about and seen the videos, I think one of the most powerful things you do is this circle. So if you can give us the 2-minute Evelyn Wood version, I want to hear about the magic of the circle.
Yeah. Most impactful work we do, it's changed my life as a human. Sometimes people associate it with a restorative practice, which restorative practice has used circle. I have a lot to say about that. I'll skip that section. Our circles are really a very unique circle that we've developed. I spend most of my time outside of being on a stage with kids, teaching educators how to do the circle that we do. It's about creating cultures of belonging, but most importantly, Mark, it's about listening. And we don't do that very good as a society anymore. If you look at the science of empathy, it always begins with perspective taking. And when you sit in a circle and you listen to people and you really listen, it changes you neurologically. It reorients your perspective. It gets you seeing someone else's point of view. It allows you to integrate those points of view of all these different people that make up this ecosystem, or different intergroups that are around you. And it's a practice that's over 400,000 years old. Everybody listening to this, your ancestors sat in circle and they shared their feelings, their thoughts, their emotions, their trepidation, everything. And we've gotten away from it as a society. And if I turned you on to any school that we do circle in, they'll see our presentations and they'll say, my mind was blown. I don't think it could get any better. And then they go to circle with us. I've done circle with infantry Marines. I just came back from California in January. We spoke to 1,000 infantry Marines. These are special human beings. And if I can take a bunch of 19 and 20-year-olds that either should be in the infantry or in jail, and I'm not trying to be disrespectful, but it's a special human, take this gun, run through that door and die. Like, if we can get these young men and a couple young women to buy into this practice, to work on true human skills, because that's what all we're doing in circle, is working on what makes us human. And we have a practice of doing that where kids are begging for it. I'll go to anybody's school in America. I'll do circle. I'll walk out of the room and the kids will turn to their teacher and say, can we do that again tomorrow? Mm-hmm. Because we understand the secret sauce, and we put it together over 8 years. And it's really, I'll end on this, it's my favorite place to be, even in my personal life, because that's what we're wired to do as humans.
Outstanding. Thank you so much for that. And I've read about and seen videos, and I know how powerful it is. So let me just take a second to tell the viewers, don't forget to watch us on E360 TV, available on Wednesday nights, 9 p.m. EST, on Roku, Apple TV, Amazon Fire. Remember to follow us on social media, Life Stories with Marc Hoberman. We're on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, and of course our YouTube channel. So remember to subscribe. Tom Murphy, thank you so much for all you do and for being here today and sharing your incredible journey. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you for watching Life Stories with Marc Hoberman. To contact Marc, email him at info@lifestorieswithmarchoberman.com or visit him on social media through Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, and LinkedIn. Thank you for watching Life Stories with Marc Hoberman.